Hello, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the Celtic Down Under podcast, the weekend review, as we analyse, do a deep dive into Celtic 1, Ross County 0, which took place on Saturday night, Perth time. Joined as always, my name is Anthony McGuire, and I'm joined as always with Paul Massey. Paul, how are we?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Anthony, yourself?
Yeah, not too bad for a Monday night. Obviously 48 hours to just about 48 hours to digest what was a tough watch, if I must be honest. But we will get into that in a minute. Weekend wise, you up to anything other than watching Celtic or?
Well, we had the public holiday on Friday here, so I took the opportunity to go to one of our local Scottish breweries and have a burn supper there. So haggis, neeps, tatties, whiskey, all the good stuff, bagpipes, the works. So yeah, and a wee bit of burns thrown in. So yeah, it was good crack. The public holiday was well placed because wasn't fit for doing too much. Included in the ticket price was a 3 hours of unlimited bar, so that was partaken of. So yeah, it was a good night, and yeah, just enjoyed the long weekend. Relatively chill beyond that. Had a wee birthday gathering for a friend on Saturday night, but that was relatively tame by comparison. Got back in time to watch the match, but kind of then wish I probably hadn't. So yeah, it was after 3 or 4 beers at this gathering, it was a challenge to stay awake till 1 a.m. And one which I may or may not have lost. So I've had the dubious pleasure of watching some of that back over the last day or so. So yeah, I'm well covered on what happens. But yeah, that was my weekend. What about yourself?
I got badly sunburnt on Friday, so that was doing some gardening, believe it or not. But yeah, so I've been in pain for most of the weekend. When I had an early dinner Saturday night, and then it was the mission to try and stay awake till 11 o'clock to watch the game. It was like one of those Tom and Jerry episodes with the matchsticks under the eyes to keep the old eyelids from closing. Must have nodded off, woke up about a couple of minutes after 11. So I was like, better log in, and obviously I'd missed the goal. And then I was half waiting for this goal. And then obviously you see the goal and you're like, that's pretty mediocre. So it's like, that's yeah. So anyway, so we'll touch on that in a bit. But yeah, and then Sunday, I worked Saturday, which is unusual. So yeah, so the weekend was a bit disjointed for me. I was sort of like day off, work, day off. And I had mission to go to Bunnings and all the various soft furnishing stores on the Sunday, so it wasn't really a day off. But as B&Q for people back in Scotland. So,
yeah, Bunnings is the Aussie version of B&Q. Yeah, it's probably a fair
so assessment. You can only imagine what I went through. But anyway, all good. So we're covering what we did in the weekends. I mean, cover what Celtic did on the park, or what they didn't do for that matter. So I entitled this episode "A Ponderous Display at Paradise." One, because I like an alliteration, and two, because ponderous is probably the right descriptive words to sort of describe just some of the play. Just very back to the slow build-up, back to passing from fullback to centre-half to fullback to centre-half to the other centre-half, out to the other fullback. And you think, one of these things with these games, particularly when teams sit in, and, Ross County did do the old 4-4-1-1, is that you want an early goal. And obviously you can't score any earlier than the first minute of the game. So then I think the expectation in the crowd, certainly my expectations at home, is that, the floodgates will open and this should be a relatively comfortable, easy affair. And then here I am at the 80th minute, wide awake, because you just know that Ross County are going to come out and have a go, because at that point the game's still 1-0. They've got nothing to lose. They've made their subs. And on another day, they could have pinched something. But then just as equally, on another day, we take our early chances in the first half. It's 3-0 at halftime, and it's smooth sailing. But it wasn't to be in either case, and it ends up being a relatively nervy affair. The players after the game, the manager, Brendan Rodgers, both said, that sometimes it doesn't go the way you want it, but you've still got to dig out a result, and the result's important. Well, yes, obviously we expect 3 points at home, but performance matters as well. You've got people paying good money to sit in cold, wet stadiums week after week to watch a game of football, and I don't think that performance on the weekend passed the eye test from the point of view of it being something great to watch. I mean, my biggest criticism was probably the fact that I've never seen Celtic break down so much in transition, not even getting to that final ball and then fluffing the final pass, but like the pass to get to the final pass, we were fluffing that. Very, very disjointed for large parts of the game, and that for me is quite unusual and a bit disconcerting, because we're coming off the back of the winter break. You know, everyone should be fit and firing. We're going to talk about the team in a second, and you know, we put in I feel quite a disjointed performance from middle to front. Paul, I've started rambling there, but you know, what's your general overall view of the game? And then from there, we'll jump into the team selections and just touch on the players that came in for various reasons.
Look, all the points you make are completely valid. I think with a couple of days of reflection, the performance wasn't great, but every game is relatively small margins. Now, we get the early goal. There's a bit of luck involved in that. We should have been 2 up shortly thereafter. Matt O'Reilly draws a good save from the keeper, and Bernardo, for a player with his ability and usual composure and technical ability, fluffs his lines and misses basically an open goal, albeit 12, 13 yards out, but he should tuck that away. At 2-0, we'll be near enough home and hose. Then we get a penalty. Stonewall penalty, we'll speak about Simon Murray later. And Lewis Palmer contrives to add to penalty woes. It makes a mess of that. So really, by 25 minutes, we should be 3-0 up. The game would be done. I would expect from that, we would win the game 4, 5, 6-0. And even if it was similar performance, but we'd convert our chances, we wouldn't hear even a fraction of the grumbling that we've heard. I understand it's a cumulative affair of frustration, of a day's bad performance on top of quite a few bad performances at the back end of last year, including drop points where we shouldn't have dropped points, and now nearly 2 transfer windows of poor quality recruitment, has this broader culmination of huge frustration in the support and in the ground. But if we take a wee step back from all of those things and just look at this game in isolation, games in January are notoriously kind of knife-edge things that can go either way. That's the first league game back. Yes, we played Bucky Thistle, but that is a significant drop-off in quality. Derek Adams had his side really, really well drilled. He had, I think, 4 debutants that he's managed to sort of pull from here, there, and everywhere, included, I think, the goalkeeper who's on loan from Fulham. So these guys have got pedigree, and they've got nothing to lose. So yes, we should be better. But I think some of the I guess ferocity of reaction to, let's be honest, a win in 3 points is a wee bit over the top. But I get where it's coming from. It's more than just a result in isolation. But I think sometimes if we're analysing the game, we've kind of got to analyse the game. I understand the bigger picture, and we could talk all night about recruitment, and I'm sure Jared and the boys did earlier. I didn't quite get a chance to catch it. It was a bit early for us. We're still working. And then their Thursday show will no doubt preview the weekend and also sort of debrief the window, which we're nearly now at the end of. What, it's middle of the day in Scotland. We've got 2 days to go, just over 48 hours to go. So we'll see what that gives. But on another day with a different backdrop, a lot of the noise would be that's the mark of champions, winning a game like that. When you're not playing well, you know, you've got a few people filling in, you haven't taken your chances, you've ground it out. And it was a grind. It was definitely a grind at times. you think to the Leela Bada late winner against Dundee United when we sort of, snatched a win from a draw. This game could be quite pivotal in the overall bigger picture of the season. So for me, poor performance, but a couple of players screw the nut and take their chances. It's a comfortable win, and we're not. We'd still be frustrated with the window, but we wouldn't have the same frustrations with that performance. I think for me, my biggest issue is we had a good run of 4 league wins and the Bucky game, which blew the cobwebs away, where we moved the ball more quickly, we got in behind, we were progressive, we created chances, and we beat teams comfortably with a bit of style and panache. And it seems like yesterday we kind of reverted back. Now, a few changes to the squad, which we'll get into. There's a few other reasons to point the finger, but it definitely needs to move up from here. But yeah, I don't think that yesterday's performance or Saturday's performance in isolation was as bad as some people are saying. I think there's a lot of the other factors flowing into the way people are feeling.
Fair points, Paul. I think my only counterpoint to what you said there is that I feel that the performances, you could count maybe on one hand the really good performances this season. Like, it's not like it's a bump in the road. Yes, we've just come back from a break, so yes, you're building up again. But I just kind of feel that these sort of scrappy-ish performances are kind of like what we've been served for most of the season. Like, there have been some highs, and there have obviously been a lot worse performances than what we saw on the weekend. But I just kind of feel that that builds into this overall maelstrom or storm of discontent as it is. Like, you're right, the transfer market situations piling the pressure on. Yeah, you've got the situation where the games, the tempo of the games definitely seems slower. And then you start looking at individual performances again. You start looking at, Kildra's obviously the obvious example and a bit of a whipping boy at the moment. And you're sort of saying, it's easy to see how people are getting upset. I mean, whether that is enough to justify booing a winning team at the end of a game, everyone will have their own view on that. And that's not for me to tell people how they should behave or act at a game. But I can understand the underlying frustration, because it's not any one thing. And I guess, with so much at stake this season, you're talking 50, 60 million in the Champions League. The other side of town, they're making some signings. Prospects, yes, but you never know. Like, they're going for it. Whether they've got the money or not, they're having a go. Whereas we just seem to be quite content at the moment, just resting on our laurels or our laurels, as it may be. And we're just, you just don't want it to come back and bite us. We all hope that we've got enough in the tank, we're enough in the squad. And obviously we'll have some Japanese and Korean players and Marco Tilio coming back to join the squad once they're finished with the Asian Cup endeavours. But we're still got games to play, and we've got a tricky run of fixtures coming up. We've got definitely 3 away games. My dad said 4. I need to double check the 4th one. I'm not 100% sure on that, but we've got Aberdeen. Who's the other one?
We've got St Mirren in the Cup.
The Cup. We've got Aberdeen away this weekend, and then we've also got another team away from home in the league.
Hibs.
I was on the tip of my tongue. Hibs. So that's 3 tricky away ties we've got, potentially with all our Asian contingent, still away. So, and the thing that slightly boggles my mind, and I know we're digressing away from the game here just slightly, but had the Japanese manager taken Hyogo as well, like, would we have just rolled with Rocco Bata up front? Like, how would we have handled that? Obviously we must have known a little bit ahead of time that Hyogo maybe wasn't getting picked, but it just seems very, very, bad planning that, we're in a situation where we've signed a winger in a position that we've got plenty of bodies to pick from, whether the quality is there or not. And we'll touch on Kuhn, because he did come off the bench and make his debut at Celtic Park. But it just seems a little bit, Under Ange, it was very clear cut. We knew what we were doing, where we were going, what the mantra was. The signings were all done at the start of the window. That was it. It was all done and dusted. Whereas now we're hoping for a Hail Mary. And we shouldn't be in that position. And again, this is what feeds into this overall frustration that fans have at the moment. And when you see performances like that in the weekend, it just amplifies it. And you're right. We score those 2 goals and it's 3-0 at half time. This is a whole different podcast. It's a different conversation that we're having. It's a different complexion on the game. Yes, there might still be criticisms about the performance, but the overall thing would be different. But because we are in this mire, and we're top of the league by 5 points, but it's still, we just feel that we're not stalled, but we're in second gear. It's like we need to click through the gears here, and we're just struggling to find third at the moment. So, yeah, it's like I say, it'd be interesting to be a fly in the wall in the Celtic hierarchy or infrastructure of them, just to try and understand how it's all working and what the status
well, I think that's obviously a big part of the frustration, because we've got no idea. And the natural inclination with this board is to go, well, they're tight-fisted, they're not willing to throw any money at it. We're sitting on a fortune. Just pay some cash, even if you have to pay a bit over the odds, and get the right bodies in. At some point, there's people, there's people out there that go, well, we've got to wait for the quality. And some of those will be hedging their bets. So some of those people will be going, maybe I don't have to go to Scotland. Maybe I can get to a Dutch side or you know what I mean?
Somewhere warmer.
Holland, Belgium, Portugal. If I can get a club there, maybe I don't have to go to Scotland. So that's one of the reasons. If we are, I've got at this point in the window, do I think that we will finish with just Kuhn? I'd be very surprised. One, because we're at fever pitch now. The place will go meltdown. Yeah. So we'll get something. I think we might get something. It might only be a loan. Who knows? But I think we will get maybe 1 or 2 in, and whether they may, a good chance they might be just loans. If they are the right quality that Brendan Rodgers actually wants and will play and will jump ahead of some of the people in that squad, perfect. I don't care if we get him in the last day if that's the case, because you are going to have to play a little bit of brinksmanship with some clubs and some player. If look at the Matt O'Reilly situation, whether we believe Atletico came in or that's Spain or whatever, if there was genuine interest there and we've rebuffed that, why would we then expect other clubs where we're trying to take presumably their best player, or one of their better players, why would we think they would give them up with a fight? Look at Shankland. I'm not saying we should be going for Shankland, but Hearts won't let him go unless it's stupid money. We're talking 5, 6, 7 million, which for Lawrence Shankland, that's the guy who failed in Belgium, is a ludicrous fee. But if somebody was willing to pay that, he would be off. Now, I don't doubt that Celtic have looked at him and Miovski, and I would imagine both Hearts and Aberdeen have said, whether we were really interested or not, I'm sure we would have at least inquired, because they're the 2 other best strikers in the league and we need a striker. So I would imagine neither of those players would move for less than 5 and probably more. So you've then got a question. Do you pay a silly amount of money for a player who's not really worth that, because it gives you the firepower to get you over the line? Now, there's an argument for saying, fuck it, yes, do it. Excuse my language. Do it. And you'll get the pushback that says they're not good enough for Europe. They're no use to us past the end of this season. And the response to that can just as easily be, well, so be it. They've done a job. They've got the 60 million pot. They either battle for a place and somehow find a spot and lift their game, or they go out on loan, or we sell them on, or whatever else, or they pick up their salary for another 3 years, like half the squad. But if you're actually looking for players that you can get in now and will be able to make the squad better into next year and compete for a place in the Champions League and all those other bits and pieces, I think it is tough. I do think it is tough, unless we pay over the odds. And I mean both over the odds in terms of fees, especially at this time of year, and in wages, because you've got to move them from wherever they are at the moment. And to come here, you're probably going to have to pay them a chunk. And we know we're not happy to break a wage structure. just on that, Cameron Carter-Vickers obviously signed an extension. It's great business. Do I expect him to see out that contract? Probably not, but it protects us and holds a fee up if he does go, and it means he's not going to go this window, at least, which is also a concern. Is it like a new signing? No, it isn't, but it's still good business by the board. But that type of signing potentially is part of uplifting the wage structure, which maybe allows us to bring in somebody that is marginally higher than we've done previously. So I think we've definitely got issues on the recruitment, but we've also got massive issues in terms of the on the pitch performance. And my issue with that is I don't know what we're doing tactically again. Like we've had some performance where we've moved the ball progressively through the lines quickly, cut players out, 1 and 2 touches, and got people in behind and made chances. And when we've done that, and again, when we did that yesterday, that's where all the threat came from. But to your earlier point, there was too much, multiple touches in the midfield and in the defense, which they were well drilled. But if you give them that much time, of course, they're going to get the 2 banks of 5 in position, which is pretty much what they did all day.
So Anthony McGuire, not me, by the way, my father. The transfer window also affects some of our players. Fair point, because obviously a bit of speculation around potentially Abada and obviously Matt O'Reilly and potentially others. Obviously Rocco Vata, will he stay? Will he go? We'll see. We'll park the transfer conversation because we kind of went on a wee bit of a rabbit hole there, but that's just a wee bit of a gut feeling of how we're feeling at the moment as supporters and watching the team play. So Paul, the team lines 3 changes that I can see from memory. So Carter-Vickers in, Narosty to the bench, Callum McGregor back in, Home to the bench, and then the injury to Greg Taylor brought a start for Alexander Bernabe, and that's the first time he has played in ages, as far as I can remember, or at least started anyway. So they were the 3 changes. That was the difference between that and Bucky Thistle, as far as I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, obviously, horses for courses. Carter-Vickers gets his 60 minutes. So no problems there. I thought Narosty did well when he replaced him. They came in at a bit of a sticky patch in the game. And overall, I thought defensively we weren't too bad. I mean, Ross County had a couple of chances. That's going to happen. Joe Hart made a couple of saves. That's going to happen. But we weren't bullied by them. I thought Stales played well. I thought, like I say, Carter-Vickers played well. I thought that was one of AJ's better games for a little while as well. I know he was caught a bit of flack, but from some quarters. But I kind of felt that he was giving us that drive down the right hand side, and it was a little bit more organised. Whereas Bernabe is a little bit more haphazard, and I don't think he really knew quite where to be at times, which is understandable. He's not really played much, and I think for me the prime example was that goal. He played the ball across, and obviously it ricocheted back to I think it was Matt O'Reilly had the shot. But by the end of it, Bernabe was basically almost in the set light in the middle. It's like, why are you there? How are you there? Like, so it's like the headless chicken mode had activated very, very early there. And so I'll take your thoughts on Bernabe, because obviously that's Greg Taylor's has copped some flack this season. Rightly so, maybe not, but he's held that position down the whole season up until he's been injured with a hamstring. What was your thoughts on Bernabe and is that a position we should be looking to strengthen with 2 days left in the transfer market?
Of course it is. We've been meaning to strengthen it. Apparently, trying to strengthen it for about 2 years. Of course, we should be strengthening at left back. We all know that. It's sick speaking about it. But in terms of speaking about Bernabe specifically, let's look at the positives. He offers drive and energy. Technically, his passing's pretty good. His touch is not too bad. My biggest issue with him is his decision making, and that comes into his positional decision making as well as his on ball decision making. There's a point late in the game where the ball was quite high coming into him in a defensive position at fullback. They're obviously trying to put some pressure. They've played the ball into his area. He's not the biggest. He should just be heading it away. He decides for some ridiculous reason to try and take it down on his chest. He jumps to try and take it on his chest, and his chest control is bad, and it goes out for a throw, and it puts us under pressure. There's another point in the second half, earlier than that, where just after Mikey Johnson's come on, they're running into each other. Like he's in the way. Like they're literally both trying to take the ball in the same area and physically bumping into each other. Like that's schoolboy. Like, and that's little school, that's primary school boy stuff. It's just ridiculous. A lot of people talk about his defensive stuff. He wasn't really tested defensively. I saw an article and we were talking about it off air at Celtic Way, probably behind the paywall, so I didn't get to see the whole thing. But essentially it was saying that despite the eye test, he was, I think, best on ground for pressing and counter pressing. Now that's fine. If he's pressing just means putting pressure on the ball, it doesn't actually mean winning it back. And yeah, I just think his decision making at times isn't great. Now you've got to give him some leeway for not being part of the side for very much. And he offers more attacking threat than he does show anything on a defensive side. But he isn't as good as Greg. We permanently have got issues with Greg Taylor's defending, and Burnaby's a worse defender, and he's not as good going forward as Greg Taylor. Taylor's positionally better, he's technically better, his passing's better, he makes better runs off the ball and on the ball, and he adds something sort of so he adds accuracy when he moves into midfield, where to your point, Burnaby adds chaos and nobody knows what he's going to do next. Sometimes I guess probably him as well. It's a fair point by Martin, and Taylor is got his limitations, but he's a quality addition when he steps in the midfield and in our attack and play. And yeah, he does make runs off the ball, which pulls and creates space. I thought on both wide areas, it was chaotic. On the left side, Palmer and Burnaby together were kind of all over the place, and kind of doing a similar thing to what Abada did on the right, which was they were always trying to get in field, where it was absolutely rammed in there with 4-4-1, which basically became 5-5-5. They defended narrow across the penalty box. They were delighted when we came inside because it would take a goal like Alistair Johnston's to kind of break that down, because without a freakish deflection going in, there isn't any room to do much else. And Abada was, especially first half, was getting into good positions and trying to cut in on his weaker foot, which I find strange, and into traffic. And Johnston was getting outside him a bit, but not enough. And I'd have liked to see Abada hold some width and play to his strengths, which is get the balls between, in the channels, like we were happening against Bucky, and albeit he was caught offside a number of times, but he was creating the space to allow those balls in behind, which he wasn't doing. He was getting the ball to feet and cutting in and trying shots with his left foot, which isn't a key strength. He's bent a few in over the years, but it wouldn't be his top strength. And Palmer had another sort of off gate, a couple of nice flick touches. He had a nice little flick that was the but one pass, I think. I think it was a flick maybe to O'Reilly that then put or Bernardo that was then they fed McGregor in for the run for the penalty. But aside from that, he didn't have a great game again. So we've definitely got issues in the wide areas. But coming back to the Burnaby point, I thought, like I almost would have preferred to see Anthony Ralston play out of position, because he at least gives you structure. He knows where he should be. And he's a more resilient defender. But preferably at best, and he wasn't even in the squad, Mitchell Frame, give the young kid a go. Why not? Like, I physically don't think he could be worse than Burnaby. I don't, like, certainly not defensively. And I don't know. I just think we've got to give these other players. We've seen enough of Alexander Burnaby to know that he's not a long-term solution.
So we'll just read out some of the comments. Thank you everyone that's contributing in the comment section. So Michael McDonald saying, according to some, Celtic aren't allowed to dig out a result and win a game. I guess the criticism here is we scored early, so it wasn't like we were up against a packed defence for 90 minutes. We were, but we weren't trying to find that winning goal. We were 1-0 up from the get-go. So there was that. We're at home. We're playing against a team that's second bottom in the league. I think you probably expect for it not to be as much of a grind, but it ended up being as such. So probably a bit of expectation versus reality in that one. Anthony Roy here saying under Ange we jagged a few late, particularly when we weren't playing well. So 3 points, 3 points. Yep, I don't think anyone's just dismissing the result. It's just we're here to obviously give our opinion on the technical aspects of the performance, because as Celtic supporters, it's obviously the expectation is we win, but obviously we also want to see a bit of a performance behind that as well, or at least signs of where we're going as a team and how we're developing and whatnot. And then Martin here said, Abada, Bernabei can't be judged as both are lacking match sharpness. Come on, guys. Fair enough. They're still coming back into it.
It's a fair point. And look, that is one of the things we could say about the whole team. Like Bernabei, not much game time. Abada coming back from injury. CCV coming back from injury. That back line's been chopped and changed kind of all season. And McGregor just back in first game of since the break. Didn't seem to phase him much, mind you. And yeah, some players coming off the bench and other bits and pieces. But I think you can judge players coming. Like you can judge players in the context of, yes, they're not fully back to match fitness, but you can still judge things like decision making. Decision making isn't something that necessarily you need to be match sharp for. You either make good decisions or you don't make good decisions. Now your body can not allow you to execute those decisions as well as they might otherwise, because you might be lacking that little bit of sharpness, which we saw a bit of that. But actual decision making on where you should be when and when you should do what things you should do at which point is absolutely valid. Now I see a follow-up point about other players. Now we'll get to those players.
We're getting there.
We'll get to those players.
Well, I was ready to say, the thing for me, and you said it is, this is my last point in Abada, but when Abada's at Bucky Thistle, yeah, he ran offside a million times, but when he got that ball across to Kyogo, A, we looked far more dangerous. B, Kyogo looked a far better player because all of a sudden he's running into a ball that the opposition can't really defend against. And it just opens up the play, and it seems so much more flowing, and you're just sort of taking less touches, and he's not necessarily getting to the byline. He's playing that sort of early cross, but that whipped across ball, which as a defender is hard to deal with because there's always that risk that you end up hitting in the back of your net. Or the worst case scenario, you clear it for a corner. I just feel we didn't do enough of that. And I think the template was there in the first minute of the game because Bernabei plays that sort of ball across, and they didn't really deal with it terribly well. It ricochets off one of their defenders, and that's what ends up leading ultimately to the goal. So you try to say to yourself, well, if that worked in the first minute of the game, why are we not doing more of that? Why are we feeling the need to tortuously tiptoe around the box for 2 minutes and then try and create a chance?
Absolutely. And the one time Kyogo came alive was when Abada got to the byline. Now, I'm not sure what the infringement was that pulled up play after it. He got to the byline. It looked like it was close to the byline, but I don't think he was flagged for a goal kick. The ball, he cuts the ball back. Kyogo controls it. It does bounce up. I think Kudahe said in commentary on Celtic TV, he was pinged for a handball. Now, I didn't see any contact near his arm. And then he's tripped. So then he's fouled. So, has it been a made up foul because there's potentially a penalty decision? Has Abada overrun it? On the freeze frame, it looks like it's out of play, but the ball's high. So my gut feeling is whole ball probably wasn't over the line. So I don't think that's the infringement. So if there is a handball, I think it's particularly soft. But that, to the point, when he got to the byline, he gets it in an area. Kyogo's in there and he's made the space from his man. I just think we're not play like it. Martin's asking us for us to have a crack at some other players. Well, here you go. I'll take each of those players. Matt O'Reilly didn't have his best game. fair enough. He's allowed that. I don't think he should have been on the pitch for as long as he was, because he clearly pinched a nerve.
Yeah.
Pinched a nerve in his back, and yeah, he played through it. And afterwards, the manager said, "We're glad he played through it and sort of showed his resilience." Now, I don't think there's any need for him to show his resilience. I'd have hooked him, got Home on, pushed McGregor further forward, and given Home more minutes, who looked solid last week. And there's definitely a player in there. And I'd much rather see Home on the pitch in midfield than we later saw Turnbull. We'll get to him in a bit. Carl, I think, had a he did a good job. I don't think there's any real criticism of his play. He was under pressure a lot. He drew the penalty. He was neat and tidy under pressure. Yet he maybe didn't, pull any Hollywood passes off. But I think he played well. So I've got no real concerns with Carl. Palmer, we've already touched on Palmer. He had a poor game. And if you sort of tuned into our last show, I made a point that he's showing a lot of the kind of similarities to Abada early in his Celtic career, which is, what looks like erratic performances, frustrating performances, but his end product and his stats are good. So his assists and goals generally are high. And so you've got a bit of a dichotomy with him. Kyogo is he's also touching on Bernardo. Well, Bernardo was below par as well. That's fair enough. He should have scored. And if 2 or 3 of your players, or 3 or 4 of your players, are below par, and a few are coming back from injuries, overall performance level is going to drop. And I think that's what we saw. Kyogo's worth a broader conversation, because there's a lot of, and Martin alludes to this in his comment, like why are we talking about these guys? Well, I think there seems to be this move from a lot of Celtic fans that Kyogo's performance level has dropped. I don't believe Kyogo's performance level has dropped. I believe we are not playing to his strengths in any way, shape, or form. To your earlier point, Anthony, we don't get the ball in the channels early enough. We don't get the ball cut across the face of goal early enough. And the wee man is left behind multiple defenders. What's he supposed to do then? Like, he's a joy to watch. Like, if he's the kind of player, obviously, it's been a long time since I've been in Celtic Park, for obviously being down in Australia, but he's the kind of player that you love to watch in a stadium when where you can follow players that wouldn't normally be in the shot, because the amount of off the ball running, you see some of it in the telly, but you don't see anywhere near as much you would see in ground, I'm sure. And guys that go to games will be able to chip in the comments if you want. He makes so many runs for the defender, for other players, and my favorite thing, I played up front when I was younger and fitter, and even in Masters teams when I wasn't. But one of my favorite things about him, and the way that the offside rule has changed down the years, is he is more than happy to sit in an offside position regularly, because he knows he's not first receiver. The wide players are first receivers. As long as they're onside, he can be in an offside position, and by the time the ball comes to him, he's onside again, because the ball's going to come back to him or flat, at which point he can't be offside even if he's ahead of his defenders. So I don't think Kyogo is playing any really different to previously. The biggest issues we're not utilizing. He had 16 touches on Saturday. 16. He does look frustrated at times, and I don't blame him, because the amount of runs he makes that he doesn't receive the ball, it's frustrating. If it's frustrating for him, it's frustrating for me, so it must be frustrating for him. He's now been in the team for 2.5 seasons, and there's players that have been in that team the whole of that time, and they still don't pick his runs more quickly enough. O'Reilly catches him occasionally, McGregor catches him occasionally, but we need to up our technical passing on the diagonal, because if we can do that, his runs are absolutely amazing. He suffers against the low block, of course he does, because he hasn't got as much space to run into. But if we release the wide players early, then all they've got to do is slide it in. They've got to play square passes or cutbacks. They're not technically that difficult, and the wee man will be in there and finish it. So I've got a lot of sympathy for Kyogo, and I've no real idea why we are not playing more to his strengths.
Oh, we're at the 40-minute mark. I don't know where time's gone tonight. We've been chatting away. So just trying to run through some comments. Hi everyone. Hi Pam, how you doing? Thank you for joining us this evening. P's asking, where's my cat this week? He's upstairs. I'm sure he might come down yelling at some point. What else we got here? We've got Peg Leg Lonergan. We are rank out wide, and Hyodra's not getting the service. That's echoing our comments we were just making. And Martin saying here, Kyogo offside against the low block, no chance. Anyway, so thank you for the comments so far. As you can see down below, we're on all the social media channels. Please give us a like and a follow. Please like this video. It helps other like-minded Celtic supporters get amongst it. Get as what's the word, views and activations and all these wonderful buzzwords in the world of social media. Paul, Luis Palma, is he hitting another penalty for you anytime soon?
He wouldn't have been hitting those if it was my choice. Never mind getting another crack after that. It's on you go.
I was trying to say, I mean, I the first one, I mean, he telegraphed that from the minute he started striding towards the ball. And keepers are wise to it now because A, two things, he keeps putting it in the same spot, and B, he's waiting for the keeper to commit. So the keepers now know just not to commit. So he totally made an absolute arse of the first one. Then, luckily, unlucky for Ross County, lucky for us, they encroached, which VAR showed clearly that they did and cleared the ball away. So it was a retake. So would the mantra not be to absolutely leather the absolute living hell out of it and just like blast it? You know, to basically do the exact same penalty twice. And I mean, he did it the second one that much harder than the first one, hadn't he? He's at the same spot. The keeper's just going, well, I think you're going to go in the same spot and got it right. But I know their keeper had quite a good game, to be honest. But I say that every week. But I'm scratching my head going like, this should not be a difficult part of our game. But yeah, you had some stats you'd worked out before you came on air, Paul, that we are almost at a 50% conversion rate for penalties this season, if you include the two takes that we had on the weekend. And it's just, you look at, James Tavernier, like he's turned it in an art form, and yes, he gets plenty of practice. But since Aaron Moyes left, we've cycled through 2 or 3 players now, and we still haven't found one that can consistently take a penalty. What are we? Do we need a penalty competition at training on a Thursday before the game of the weekend to work it out?
I'd be doing it on Monday, and again on Tuesday and Wednesday. We've had 11 penalties in the league this season, if you include the retake in that. So 10 penalties, but 1 retake. We scored 6. We've missed 5. Palmer's missed 3 and scored 2. For me, I quite like to pass penalty in the bottom corner, but if you're going to do that, you've got 2 things. You've got to hit it with a decent amount of pace, and you've got to make sure it's right in the corner, like basically by the post. And yes, that you got the risk of, Rio's hit the post, Turnbull's hit the post. I think Palmer might even hit the post with one of his other misses, but he was passing them a good foot to foot and a half inside the post. Wickham's good reach. He's guessed well. It's down low. It's not the worst penalty in the world, but you're right. He's telegraphed it. He thinks he's given him the eyes, but it's run up, and you can stick that little stuttery run as far as the sun shines. Honestly,
I don't like it.
I think he's done it 4 times and missed 3 of them. Like
the one he scored, the one he scored, he just ran up and hit it normally.
Yeah,
he scored
2 where he's right. There's that one. That was the first one was an absolute belter. He smashed it, but pulled it with bend right into the side net, and same side, mind you. He pretty much always goes that side. And then the other one, he just smashed down the middle. I actually, for somebody who's clearly a good striker of a ball, I don't think he's a very good penalty taker at all. He has very little variation. The run up is a nightmare. I don't want to hammer him on attitude, but he was laughing and joking with the keeper after the game. And I can only assume that was kind of a bit of a laugh and joke, saying, oh, well done on saving the 2 penalties. But I'm not sure he understands the gravity of scraping a home win to teams like Ross County at Celtic Park in that kind of atmosphere and missing 2 penalties. It's just not good enough. Like, it's not good enough. And I know he's a young lad, but he shouldn't be on penalties. And I said ages ago when we started missing 1 or 2 and we chopping and changing Turnbull, Rio, etc. We need to get like the 7 or 8 players that are most likely to be on the pitch and let them have a penalty competition to the death and see who's the best, and then do it again and again until it's absolutely clear who's the best, and then have them practicing him week in, week out. Like, for somebody like Matt O'Reilly to not be in the mix, for somebody like Kyogo to not be in the mix, Carl's missed a few, but he's a decent.
You're almost to the point where you've got to go back to that. I mean, he scored a couple for Scotland in years gone past. So I mean,
and for me, it's a mentality thing. It's obviously not a tech. I can hit a decent penalty, right? And I'm hopeless and overweight and past it.
Don't be too hard on yourself, Paul.
It's got nothing to do with your ability to strike a ball. A penalty's 80% mentality and 20% technique. And we are weak mentally. Like, we were absolutely rattled after we missed those 2 penalties. And for a bit, we were all over the shop. And they should have probably scored the header right on half time.
Yeah.
So instead of going in 3-0 up, it should have been 1 each. So that, and we just get. I understand. Like, I've been in Celtic Park. Sometimes the atmosphere in there on days like that, it's toxic. It's really not a nice place to be, and your players can feel that. But the fans have got, to your earlier point, the fans have got a right to be disgruntled and to show, frustration. They pay their money and they pay enough. So the players need to be mentally tougher than that. They need to be able to shrug that off and push on again. And yeah, there's just a lack of mental toughness, I think, around this stuff.
I'll probably just move on to Brendan Rodgers' comments post-match. So there was a comment from Paul Cuddihy basically saying, 1-0, yeah, got the result. Do you think the lack of tempo and the way that Ross County set up was the reason why we only came out with a 1-0 win, and it was a wee bit scrappy-do with the last 10 minutes to go sort of thing. And Brendan was very quick to say, no, that wasn't the issue. And we come up against that all the time. And the pitch was terrible. And we'll have a quick conversation about the pitch, because the pitch is looking bad at the moment. It looks rough. There were certain instances. There was one where Liam Stales in the first half, he's tried to play a pass, I think it was, they just sort of ballooned off his foot, because obviously just hit a massive pop mark and bounced up. And when you're trying to play that slick attacking football that Celtic likes to play, haven't been able to do that. We've hardly kicked the ball in that park for weeks, because obviously, there's been the winter break, and even before that we had a run of away fixtures. So the park's not really getting seen much action, but for some reason it looks absolutely horrid at the moment. Paul, any sort of thoughts on around that? Is there any, is there anything to do about it?
The weather conditions in Scotland have been horrific: snow, wind, rain, all of that. But my understanding is there's some pretty big covers with, special lamps and all those other bits and pieces that be sitting over the surface. I'm not a horticultural expert, so believe it or not. So I'm not sure, but I think the pitch is looking worse.
Not a grass.
No, I definitely know that. But I think the pitch is looking worse than in previous seasons. And
it's looking terrible.
And for a good number, and Scottish winters don't change that much. For a good number of years, you barely notice the difference in the quality of the pitch between winter and in spring. You would in the other grounds, obviously, but you wouldn't notice it at Celtic Park. But it's looking really, really rough at the minute. And we know Rodgers is a stickler for the pitch. Remember, he had it relayed quite early in his first tenure, because it was a bit of a shambles when they put down that multi-dual surface hybrid thing. That's the word I'm looking for. That hybrid pitch, and it just didn't work, and then he had to get it. But yeah, like, again, this plays to the money, huge amounts of money in the bank. We've got a pitch that doesn't look conducive to playing the style of football in it. we've got a squad that's lacking quality. We've got a board that appears to be asleep at the wheel. Back to my earlier point, there's a cumulative pile up of things to be disgruntled about, and the fans are clearly showing that.
I think there's a couple of other comments with Rogers sort of saying, "Oh, I'm not a mind reader, and I don't know like what's happening with transfers, or do you know something that I don't?" And I think the real crux of that comment was he was probably asked the same question before the game, and then he's asked the same question after the game, as if like, "Oh, have you signed a player in the 90 minutes that the game's been going on?" He's like, "Well, obviously not. Like, stop asking me the same question over and over again." So I think there's a little bit of frustration there from him as well. But did he really sign up for this? Like, has he come back to Celtic to, just amble through with the squad he's got and develop these players, because that's all you're getting? It's just, I don't know. And I'm not asking necessarily, it's a bit more of a rhetorical question there, Paul, but it's just,
there's
just
another hour's discussion in that. And it's the question it's the question the whole support's asking. Like when Nicholson and Cal McGregor went out to Spain to convince him to come when he'd already knocked it back and he was going to have a year off, something must have enticed him to do that. And you have to think that some sort of access to cash, like we're on an under net spend. We've spent about 19 and we've taken in 30 odd in fees with the Jota money and a few other small ones. So there's a net profit of 10 mil this season. Yes, we put some of that back into other contracts, but we're also sitting on cash balances of anywhere up to 50 to 70 million, other than monies that are already earmarked for stuff. And the prize is too big to sort of, well, you would think the prize is too big to gamble, but it looks like there will be a bit of a gamble. Now, I think that's a gamble we're still favourites for, but it's going to be tighter than it needs to be. And there's not really much of an excuse for that.
What's the thing? I think you're right. I think it's the mentality that as fans we want to absolutely stamp the life out of Rangers and absolutely run away with it, and we've got the financial means to do that if we really wanted to. But we seem just to be sort of like going, tag, we'll just take we'll go a couple of steps ahead of you, and as long as we maintain that gap, then that's all right. That's enough. And it's like, no. Like, give them a dead leg and then fucking sprint 100 yards down the line, and we'll take that much of a lead into the rest of the season and beyond. Because you just kind of feel if the shoe was in the other foot, they'd be suffocating the life out of us right now. And thankfully, that's not the case. But I just feel that they'd be spending every dollar. And I'm not saying that that's the right answer either, but I'm just saying that, we just seem to be holding back. And it's like, why? With so much at stake, with so much, and we could be coming on here next week and we could be little idiots because we've signed 2 or 3 players and it's like, oh, it was all worry for nothing, whatever. But at this point in time, as this podcast is being recorded, we've got Nicholas Kuhn. And let's talk about Kuhn. So what did you think? It was his debut. He came off the bench for Parma. There was one particular move where he just absolutely drew the defender in, got past him. His cross wasn't great, but the movement and that beating the player was like, oh, that was nice on the eye, and more of that, please. And then he shifted over to the right.
That was on the left-hand side. The weird one for that with me is he went with his right foot, which he's stronger on his left side. So he's got to the byline on his left foot. You think, well, just whip it across with your left foot. And he's gone and tried to bend it with the outside of his right foot, which, again, probably not necessary to do that. But he was neat and tidy. I think it's really hard to judge wide players, particularly on short performances. And to the earlier points about guys like Abada coming back from injury, I think because when you're out wide, you're in and out of the match. You're not. You can go through quite long spells without being on the ball or having much time on the ball. And then there's also that thing of, because your time on the ball is limited, there's that kind of, especially early on, there's that expectation that you want to make the most of every opportunity you've got. So hard to judge. Nothing hugely out of the ordinary. I thought his work rate back was pretty good, which is nice to see. Passing wise, he didn't try to do too much, but it was tidy. He did try one over the top, which I think he was trying to get O'Reilly in or Bernardo in later on. And maybe it was even Kyogo, it could have been. And it was just, he didn't quite get his range. But the fact he was looking for that creative diagonal ball outside to in was I was a positive, I think. So he's not going to be judged on. Well, he might be judged by someone his first 4 or 5 games, but he won't be judged by me on his first 4 or 5 games. He'll need some time to bed in. We've seen plenty of people misjudge players' capability after too few games. So yeah, we'll let him get bedded in, but nice to see him get some minutes.
It was remiss was the start of the pod not to mention that Celtic were wearing black armbands for the very early sudden passing of Stuart Gray, son of Eddie Gray. He made about 30, 40 appearances for Celtic. Stuart,
in
Paul, in the early 90s?
Yeah, no, just obviously I think he was just 50 or just shy of 50.
50.
So yeah, no age at all. Dangerously close to an age that I'm coming up on in a few years. Certainly closer to that age than when he was playing at Celtic. Yeah, he was around in the 90s when we had at that period of sort of quite a lot of turmoil at the club. But obviously just really sad news that somebody would lose their life at such a young age. So yeah, great to see the club represent and make a representation on that, and obviously the black armbands were a nice touch.
Have you got any before we do our man of the match, Paul? Any musical recommendations, or do you want to do man of the match first? What do you want to do this week? What are you feeling?
Before I do either of that, I said earlier I was going to mention this, and we haven't really touched on it, but I was just going to mention 2 things. One, refereeing, positionally all over the shop, like in the way, just
Cal Mack, he was basically shadowing him for the first half of the game.
Just terrible, like, and again, the innocuous sort of stuff, and just have my absolute. It comes to my second point: an absolute reluctance to put his hand in his pocket and raise a card. Simon Murray, in my book, was lucky to stay on the pitch. He should have been booked for the aftermath of the penalty.
Yep.
Not necessarily for the foul. Yes, it's a foul in the box, the penalty. That's
remonstrating.
Fine. Yeah. But the shoving, the remonstrating, the diving, hand gestures, it's a booking all day long. And then he's just kicking people and throwing himself into tackles. And there was a bit of that. I wouldn't say County set out to boot us off the park, but they were reasonably robust in the challenge. And he was just completely reluctant. There was 2 cards, 1 each. That was it. Bernardo got a yellow and get on up. James Brown got one very early on for a pretty heavy challenge, which he was upset about. And he was.
I think somebody in our group chat said he was the Wish version of Gattuso. Something like that. It was quite funny.
He does look a bit like that. So yeah, so that I just have one little point on generally Simon Murray and the referee. I thought they were both extremely poor. Let's do man of the match, and then we'll finish with something different. My man of the match on his 450th appearance was Callum McGregor.
Yes, I agree. And 450 appearances. Somebody was calculating the maths online, and they reckon that he could crack the 600 mark, so he could overtake Paul McStay possibly if he keeps up his, the number of games he's playing. Because at the moment, obviously, not showing any signs of slowing down at the moment. But obviously, age catches up with us all, but definitely we'll get into the 500 club, like I said, hopefully plenty more appearances from our captain to come. But he was the Daffabet man of the match, and he was my man of the match as well on the weekend. Did his best to try and get his going, but like I said, just didn't quite happen as much as we would have wanted it to. Alrighty, let's just have a quick look. Any other comments I need to put up here before we go? Martin's saying, I hope we sign SVH, which I'm assuming is Sydney Van Hooijdonk. I wouldn't mind signing Big Sydney as well, but we'll see what happens. A couple of days to go. You never know what might happen at a favourite Bologna. He might be on a plane to Glasgow. Fingers crossed. You never know what might happen. Paul, it was the hottest 100 on the weekend. So in Australia, our alternative radio station for the country has an online voting for the most popular songs, alternative songs for the year. Anything in the top 10 that was sort of you've recommended of this year or in the last year of the podcast, or is that not your
clue.
vibe? No clue.
So I very rarely listen to the radio these days with streaming services. You've got your pick of what else to listen to. If I ever listen to radio, I probably would have Triple J on in the background, but it's probably aiming at a slightly younger demographic than my good self. So yeah, no, I haven't actually caught up on what's in there. I'm sure I'll recognize a few of the songs. Maybe I doubt there's anything I've recommended on here. Although I have started finally recommending and listening to more Aussie music, so there would have been potentially something in there. But today's music recommendation is the much welcome return of one of my favorite bands. Elbow are back with the lead single off a new album. So the single is Lover's Leap. It's available now. The new album is out in March, the 22nd, which will be called Audio Vertigo. It's going to be their 10th studio album. So yeah, Elbow continue to go from strength to strength, follow up on their last album, which was 2021. So yeah, 10 albums in probably about 20-ish years, give or take. So
it's not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty prolific in this day and age of 3, 4, 5 years between albums by a lot of bands. So yeah, get your lugs round Elbow's Lover's Leap, and album is on the way in a few weeks.
I haven't.
What about you? You watching or listening? Not watching anything now. Well, I'll mention a quick TV thing.
What's that?
So I've not started watching it yet, but I love the first series, and it's back as of tonight in Australia, so it's probably already back in the UK. Trigger Point, with Vicky McClure. It's
yes, I've seen the first.
Jed Mercurio show. Season 2 starts back on Aussie TV. It's on Stan if you're down in Australia. Okay. Yeah. I think it's going to be the old episode by week release, which is kind of annoying, but we'll make do. But yeah, season 1 was very good, and yeah, season 2 is now out tonight.
I know. Yeah, I was. Yes, True Detectives like that as well. It's week to week release, so I think the new episode just dropped today. So I'm watching that. I've actually made a New Year's resolution to actually watch some movies that are classics that I've never actually got a chance to, or never actually sat down to watch. So I knocked off, not on the weekend just gone, but last weekend knocked off Jaws. So I never actually sat and watched Jaws the whole way through. Wow. And In Bruges, because I hadn't actually seen that either. So
one of my favorite movies.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that.
I believe my wife doesn't. She's not got the attention span for movies very often, so she prefers shows as opposed to movies. But I bullied her into watching In Bruges relatively recently. I love that movie.
Ralph Fiennes for me was brilliant. He was really good.
He's absolutely glad. But just the interplay between the two leads is excellent. On that, have you seen The Banshees of Inisherin?
Not yet. So that's now gone onto the list because so. Yeah, we'll get there.
It's same but different, but it's good, but it's pretty dark. As is kind of
the case. That doesn't bother me
with these things. But yeah, worth a look. But I think I enjoyed In Bruges even more than The Banshees. But
so yes,
take a look.
So if you're looking for really, really delayed movie reviews, you might be in a few at the end of the podcast through the year, because I thought, well, why not? So there's quite a lot of movies on that list of things I haven't seen. My dad can't believe I haven't seen The Shawshank Redemption, but anyway, we won't go into that right now.
Really?
Anyway, I'm more of a Pulp Fiction man myself. But anyway, so thank you very much for joining us tonight. We're digressing massively, so thank you for joining the Weekend Review. We'll be back at 8:30 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time, so that's 12:30 Celtic Park time, UK time. We'll be live. We are hoping to get a few new recruits on with us over the next couple of weeks. Otherwise, it will just be me and Paul, which is perfectly fine. But, we always like more voices. So do like and subscribe. Feel free to drop a comment. And we will see you next week. Paul, all that's left to say is... Hail, hail.